Xunlei, ticker symbol XNET, had their earnings yesterday, and in one short sentence, I think they were really good. Not entirely perfect, but pretty good. Before I dive into the actual earnings and give you my takes around it, check out in the comment section. I will link a video I did this morning with Felix Finance around talking NIO things, the good, the bad, and expectations and stuff like that. It was a fun chat with Felix, possibly gonna do that again. And also for those who are interested on my second takes, second thoughts around NIO earnings and a management call, check out my Patreon. I did a walkthrough through the earnings call and gave some of my second views around this. And now let's jump into Xunlei, which has become one of my biggest investment positions. So hopefully one of these newcomers that can drive my stock portfolio performance up once China comes back. And yesterday we had a nice green run for most Chinese stocks, and Xunlei was part of it, although not quite leading it, despite what I think were really good earnings. So here we go. Xunlei XNET has reported 60 million in quarterly revenues, up 8.8% over the previous quarter. Most of it, the bulk of it, came from the cloud computing and internet value-added services, 35.2 million. Notably, they reported a net loss of 5 million this time, so that is one of the downsides of this reporting. But the revenues have been up significantly. And as I have mentioned with my patrons before on my expectations on these earnings, actually, I said, let's look for the cloud computing and the internet value added services, which should hopefully drive the revenues. And they have overperformed actually significantly. The high guidance was $58 million and came in actually at 60. Most notably, they gave another good guidance in my view, $67 million revenues for the low guidance, and the high guidance $71 million. So while I thought cloud computing and EVAS would actually land between 52 and 53% of all of the revenues, it actually almost made up 60% now, and that is, in my point of view, great. So the subscription revenues are down or almost equal a little bit, and the online advertising revenues are under pressure, down to 2.1 million. Personally, I don't mind at all that subscription and in particular advertisement business is declining a little bit. In fact, I hope that Xunlei can grow out of these businesses, and in the management call they actually mentioned that they hope that these businesses, which are currently still more profitable and more producing the cash flow for the business, to reinvest in new stuff. And I invested mainly because of two things into Xunlei. So first of all, I see Xunlei sort of as something similar that actually Cloudflare and Fastly are doing with deploying CDN services. So accelerating internet, particularly in the area of online video live streaming, and in the case of Xunlei with a so-called hybrid CDN technology that is based on peer-to-peer technology, so thereby not going through the traditional centralized servers, but rather having a range of different nodes deployed between users and also third-party distributors like mobile carriers and so on. All of these feed into a more dynamic network that is linked between those peers and nodes there, using algorithms in order to speed up the connectivity, and that on a lower cost level. And this is what I hope they would be able to really scale big in the future. And so while this time they are printing a net income loss here of 5.1 million compared to previously being actually neutral or even having a small profit, I don't mind that too much actually, because they mentioned how they have one-time effects on the legal side. I think that's mainly due to the regulatory issues around the online advertisement, where they now need legal support in order to deal with the crackdowns, and that not only manifests here in the revenues, but also with the problem that they have more costs for the lawyers and stuff like that. And then The positive here is that the bandwidth cost, which is actually at the core business of the CDN network, well, it has increased from in absolute numbers from last time 18.5 million. But of course, also the revenues of this business has come up, and now the bandwidth cost has actually declined here from 65%, 64% to now 62% of the costs of the revenues created here, the 35 million. And so this is telling you that actually not only is this cloud computing business here on fire and growing faster than I have personally expected, but second of all, it is also becoming more profitable, although not yet in a way that it could entirely mitigate these net income numbers here, but ultimately it may still be possible, I would say, that Xunlei is breaking even on an annual basis here if they print a moderate Q4, and given the high guidance here, maybe they can shift around some costs, and that would be great to have an entire year in the positive, in the green. And so overall, this is great news in my point of view. I'm very happy about that because I've doubled down and invested more in this company. And of course, there was a black box and a question mark whether or not the fundamentals keep intact. And well, I think the previous issue with Xunlei is that it hasn't shown the enormous growth numbers, like for instance a Cloudflare or a Fastly, which are growing much, much faster. But at the same time, well, the revenues that Xunlei is creating are, I would say, even more significant already, and also they are closer to profitability and are doing better on the bottom line of the business at least. And so now that they can show here that they can actually pull off growth also in the segment is a very positive thing in my point of view. Although, of course, still this is early stages. I have no idea whether or not this will actually have an impact on the short-term share price yet. But for me, it's always about the fundamentals plus the business and investment hypothesis here, and it's exactly on point of where I was hoping it to go. Now, another important piece of what happened yesterday is that the Xunlei earnings call was this time a little bit more crowded. So there were a couple of not only institutional investors, but also a retail investor asking questions. And this is in stark contrast to the last earning calls, which had no one actually asking a question, and the call was just finished after the executives reading through the transcripts. And so this time there were quite a few comments and questions around the strategy of Xunlei, around the blockchain business and stuff like that. And notably, there was also the CEO on the earnings call, which I haven't personally heard speaking before. And so that has been a novum as well. And while there wasn't anything particularly that I would like to share now that was mentioned on the call, still it's more around seems like there are things happening in the background, like the company possibly, hopefully learning now to communicate a little bit better with the investors, and hopefully thereby also attracting a couple more people interested in the stock, because that is, in my point of view, right now the main issue with companies like Xunlei and SAP Health, for example, that they have a very low trading volume and are small caps, so below 1 billion market cap. And we need more people being aware about these companies, more demand for the stock, I would say. Otherwise, even the best numbers possibly won't have huge impacts on the stock price in the short term. However, I think if the company continues to perform like this, it should be a no-brainer until it will attract also a larger amount of institutional capital, particularly at a point in time when Chinese stocks are more sought after again. And so this company now trading below 200 million in market cap while having, I think, 220 million in cash on the balance, plus 20 million loaned out to another company, and making definitely more than 200 million in annual revenues. It looks like more like 230 35 with an annual growth rate above 25% year over year, rather actually increasing and momentum picking up here in comparison to a company like Cloudflare. And don't get me wrong, I have personally a big position in Cloudflare as well and rode it up all the way. Haven't sold a share yet, but this company is trading at sometimes like 100 price to sales, while Xunlei, which is not in the exact same business but in a particularly similar and comparable business also from in terms of gross margin, in terms of total addressable market and so on, and this company is trading at less than 1 price to sales. I would say this is a huge bargain, and at the same time not a business that is running into trouble despite printing now a negative quarter, but so much cash on hand, this isn't even impacting anything. And as the management pointed out, this was due to one-time effects plus investing more into R&D, exactly where you would like to see it. An issue would be if growth is decelerating, if there would be a larger impact of the crackdowns and so on. And I would say personally we can really be relaxed around what's happening in the advertisement business here for Xunlei, because the cloud and infrastructure and internet services is such more of an important business section there. So this is my quick review on the numbers. Once again, I'm pretty excited and positive around it. Cannot promise at all whether or not this will move the stock in the direction that I hope it will. What I can tell you is that this makes me confident in my investment, and well, I'm staying invested. But of course, this is not investment advice. You need to do your own due diligence and see whether or not you find this an attractive company to invest in, and whether you think that this company has exciting technology. I do think they have. I think they're not communicating it well enough, and I hope that I can help to kind of uncover this technology and hopefully also unlock some of those growth prospects of this company. But well, that will be up for future videos. So thank you guys for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you personally think about this investment opportunity. Check out the video again with Felix Finance, and then see you with more over the weekend or early next week. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great weekend and see you in the next one.